Welcome back to HelpCoin, and let me to hit you with something genuine before we even warm up. One of the most dramatic story swings we've witnessed this month has occurred in the last few hours. We have new data from CME Group that most people will misinterpret, a crazy 500x this year estimate that is circulating, and a recent development from the White House that directly impacts cryptocurrency markets. Something that we will dissect and deconstruct using real logic rather than fantasies. Lock in because I'm going to walk if you hold XRP. The information you provide is not optional. This is what distinguishes individuals who comprehend the macro setup from those who are duped by headlines, noise, and unrealistic goals promoted by influencers. Let's start with the White House update, which is the first hit. And no, unlike half of the crypto influencers, I'm not here to exaggerate it or turn it into a bullish emergency alarm. What fell is simple. The policy phase that the present administration is entering will have a direct impact on the liquidity situation in the US markets. In case you forgot, XRP's lifeblood is liquidity. Absent liquidity, expansion, nothing changes. I don't care how many CEOs tweet, how many tokenization announcements are made, or how many press releases you read. The price remains fixed in the absence of liquidity. And because macro policy decisions affect liquidity providers, the White House is currently involved whether they are aware of it or not. The same individuals who ultimately decide how quickly money enters the cryptocurrency market. But now let's move on to the important part. 90% of the market would have been unaware of the CME Group's comments if you weren't listening. The world's largest derivatives exchange is CME Group. For those who choose to act as though random cryptocurrency exchanges are more important, let me reiterate. Release figures that reveal a narrative that the majority of the XRP community is still unsure of. They said that demand for its regulated XRP futures product has skyrocketed since its May introduction. Not mine, but theirs. More than 567,000 contracts were traded, amounting to around 27 billion in volume and approximately 9 billion XRP. This is where the majority of individuals fall. Fantasy world. When they see large numbers, they immediately assume that the price should be rising. No, this isn't how it operates. Futures for XRP don't raise prices. Market structure, not market direction, is created by futures. Instead of creating demand for the actual asset, they provide liquidity circumstances. The volume of futures can soar while the price does nothing at all. And that's precisely what's taking place. However, this is what CME is actually suggesting. The establishments are becoming warmer. They're launching the engine. Liquidity depth is being tested. Volatility is being measured. They are charting the behavior of XRP under various volume loads. This has nothing to do with price. It's preparedness. Getting ready. Because spot XRP ETFs, not futures, are where the actual power lies. The average spectator becomes perplexed at this point. Noise is what futures are. Spot ETFs indicate real asset purchases, real supply removal, and real demand exerting pressure on the actual supply of XRP. We are discussing Bitwise and Coin, Canary Capital, Shares, Wisdom Tree, and eventually the titans like Grayscale and BlackRock. You're crazy if you believe that these players are here for publicity or amusement. These companies are worth trillions of dollars. They don't try new things. They build up. Everyone with half a brain is essentially being told to prepare by CME's announcement today. The infrastructure is becoming warmer. The mapping of liquidity is under progress. They're building the institutional runway. The majority of retail investors are too preoccupied to process any of this, viewing short-term price candles and emotionally responding to headlines on Twitter. However, those who truly comprehend market structure are aware of what CME is indicating. However, there is one more thing you should know from this section before we get into detail about the 500x claim and the ETF aspect later in the movie. The distinction between reality and story. There is currently a divide in the XRP market between those who are following the hype and those who are studying the facts. In every cycle, one group is destroyed. Every cycle is survived by the other, and gains from structural changes over the long term. This is not a hype-filled CME update. It isn't. It's not a secret code. It is concrete evidence that institutions are already using XRP derivatives extensively. You may be sure that they don't warm up unless they plan to transition into the actual thing. The complete circus emanating from mainstream crypto media is the next item that needs to be called out. Half of the sources immediately switched to pointless diversions when CME announced their data, rather than investigating what those numbers truly represent. Coinbase was today's worst offender. As if it were a smoking gun, they promote the headline, Ripple co-founder cashes out again. The predictability of these outlets is embarrassing. Clicks, not truth, are what they need. Therefore, even if it is wholly deceptive, they seize the most dramatic aspect they can discover. Chris Larsson's actions are well known to anyone who has been following along. In addition to moving XRP, he made a significant investment in one of the biggest XRP treasuries available. If you want to dump and flee, don't put 50 million XRP into a long-term institutional quality treasury. The narrative they're attempting to promote is totally destroyed by that action alone. But since it doesn't cause anger, they won't tell that aspect. And that's precisely why retail is caught off guard. They have greater trust in headlines than in institutional behavior or unchained statistics. In the meantime, the real data show that serious players' underlying interest hasn't decreased at all in spite of the hoopla. The sole thing. It is not sentiment to suppress this market at this time. The pressure is structural. You're witnessing the very antithesis of a free market with the drama surrounding the government shutdown, disputes over tariffs, and defensive actions by liquidity providers. The issue isn't the news per se. Liquidity providers respond by pulling back, tightening spreads, choking volatility, and flatlining price movement. The White House's announcement today merely serves to further obscure the situation. Next Thursday, President Trump will meet with Xi Jinping, and it's clear what's happening when Scott Bessent steps in to lead the vice presidential level meeting. There is enough geopolitical friction to stop some flows until things become clear. Liquidity providers sit on their hands when they detect uncertainty. The market moves as though it's underwater because of this. Here's what most folks overlook, though. The rebound is violent after these choke spots are cleared. XRP has consistently acted like a compressed spring. Explosive unraveling is followed by protracted periods of repression. Additionally, ETFs. Getting closer, that pressure is increasing just as retail attention is shifting in the wrong way. Relying on media narratives is therefore a losing tactic. Reading headlines from people who have no idea what derivatives, order books, or institutional positioning are won't help you navigate a market. You need to consider who is investing, who is constructing, and who is setting up for long-term custody. And at the moment, all of the institution's signals point to the same conclusion. They're getting ready for scale. Retail is occupied with debating whether. Tokens were sold by Chris Elson. In the meantime, CME is handling billions of contracts. Templeton Franklin is getting ready. Not even BlackRock has arrived at the table. The infrastructure is still growing. That's the true tale. That's what really counts. You're already behind if you're not focusing on that side of the chessboard. The single largest drag on this market is now the government shutdown. And those who act otherwise are not paying attention. Price activity isn't being choked by the headlines per se. Behind the scenes, it's the liquidity response. All of the major liquidity providers move into defensive mode when the government goes into shutdown mode. Tighter risk parameters, slower order execution, less exposure, and a decreased propensity to take the opposite side of big trades are all consequences of this. Furthermore, the whole cryptocurrency market feels as though it has been stuck in place when liquidity sources withdraw. This explains why candles appear slow. The system is essentially being throttled, even when there should be bullish news. Furthermore, because